They lose when we want them to win, and they win when we want them to lose. Welcome to this recap episode as the Giants defeat the Las Vegas Raiders 34-10 in the second to last game of their NFL season, with a 100% chance of getting the first overall pick in the 2026 NFL draft if they won the game. They did not. Those odds now go down to what I believe is about 5 to 15%, something along those lines. I'm Josh, and I'm joined by my friend and co-host Alex. We're here to break all of this down and kind of what this means now for the future of the New York Giants franchise in terms of maybe players who are now sticking around after this superb game, but also the fact that the Giants will not have the first overall pick most likely in this upcoming draft. Alex, how you doing?
Yeah, not great. Obviously the Giants probably most likely lost out on, two or three first round picks and trade down value or Mendoza if they wanted him, of course, which, those were the reports this morning. I'm sure, that's not true. And it was just preparation in case they lost. But yeah, really, really frustrating to have to suffer through, you know, back-breaking loss after back-breaking loss all season, and then the one time you're like, okay, can these guys just lose? They cannot. Deontay Banks with a kick return all the way for a touchdown. I mean, what the heck? Deontay Banks basically doesn't play anymore, and suddenly he gets an opportunity because Cordell Flott is out, and he is now, Patrick Surtain in coverage, and he is now the greatest returner of all time. So that's always a fun one. The Giants offense was rolling, the play calling was somewhat normal. And, it was, I think, Josh, we can both admit the Raiders might be the worst team I've ever watched ever. Maybe not. The 0-16 Browns were pretty pitiful, but these Raiders are not much better, and they are deserving of the number one pick. I will say that, but very frustrating as a Giants fan who's had to sit through all the BS all year to have to be second pick, best case scenario probably, but even the potential to fall down to the third or fourth pick, depending on what happens against the Cowboys next week. So very frustrating. The Giants just cannot seem to ever do what's in their best interest, and here we are again. And does it impact Joe Shane's job security? Does it impact what the Giants do in the draft? Most definitely. So a lot of big impacts from a quite substantial win over the Raiders. But if you watch 5 minutes of the Raiders in today's game, it was pretty clear who was going to come out on top.
I have two things from that. One, I agree with you. One, I don't. First thing where I agree, the Raiders are absolutely a horrific, organization, franchise, team right now, whatever you want to call it. I feel bad for those fans just as much as I feel bad for us as Giants fans, because what those fans are going through, along with the move from Oakland to Las Vegas and losing a lot of people there, and then how bad the team has been, and unfortunate for Pete Carroll too, who's been in the NFL for a long time, to have to deal with this as a head coach at like 74 years old is rough. With that being said, they deserve the first pick. The other thing I have to say, Alex, to what you mentioned, I understand where you're coming from, where it's frustrating. But after the certain point of when the Giants kind of headed to halftime is when I had the realization. It was 17-3, and I said, out loud, whatever, to my parents, but also like in my head, I was like, okay, the Giants are going to win this football game. And kind of that flip at halftime for me was, all right, I was hoping that they would lose this football game to, you know what, they're going to win it at this point. Let's have some fun. And I rooted for the team in the second half, as we should. We are Giants fans at the end of the day. We always hope for the franchise to win, except in these very specific cases, which unfortunately over the past 5 to 10 years have actually happened more than just today for the Giants, where they're in a situation where fans are really hoping that they lose in order to get a high draft pick, maybe even the number one overall pick. But Alex, I honestly enjoyed this game. Once I kind of ruled out the, oh, well, they're going to whatever. I wish we played the Raiders every week. That would be in the playoffs. But regardless of how much you can take away from this game, I don't know. But what I will say is Jackson Dart played really well. He completed 22 of 30 balls today, 30 passes for over 200 yards. He didn't have a pick, nor did he have a touchdown through the air. But what did he do? He did it on the ground instead. And this was really a true Jackson Dart mentality game of, I'm going to beat you when I take off with my legs. And when that doesn't work, I'm going to throw it through the air. He seemed really comfortable. He was honestly even kind of, I think he does this every game, but, bantering against the Raiders side. You saw that multiple times when he got shoved out of bounds, what have you. But 9 rushes outside the numbers for 48 yards and 2 touchdowns, a couple of QB keepers in there, a couple of read options where Jackson Dart read the defensive line and made the decision to hold on the ball and not hand it off to a running back. And also just, like I said, like scrambling outside and getting touchdowns. He loves to take off. We saw that with his second touchdown in this game. And that was when he faked the handoff to, I believe, was Devin Singletary on the 4th down and took it himself and scored towards the left pylon. So that's where I want to start here, is that I am actually happy with how this game turned out. Obviously, yes, I wanted the pick, but once I realized that wasn't the case and the Raiders were so bad, I needed to see players succeed, and there was a lot of them. And Jackson Dart was just one of them, but obviously the most important.
Yeah, and I think we saw Wan'Dale Robinson obviously eclipse the 1,000-yard mark this season. Obviously, he will be getting paid this offseason, most likely not on the Giants, would be my guess. But he's earned himself probably $100 million plus contract in free agency, and
What?
potential $100 million plus contract over the entirety of the contract, not $100 million a year.
Oh,
but
okay.
yeah. No, $100 million plus contract in total value, not per year. He's not getting paid double what Patrick Mahomes gets paid. But
okay.
I think he'll probably get something around 4 years, $25 million north of that. So, more than $100 million is basically what I was saying. But he's been exceptional. It's going to be interesting to see what the market is for him. And I think that's kind of the biggest takeaway for me in this one is, okay, I've realized he's going to get paid now. Are the Giants going to be involved? I don't think the Giants, with a Malik Neighbors probably extension coming soon, are going to be in the market to pay 2 guys at the receiver position over $25 million a year annually, which is, I think, where Wan'Dale's market's going to be, especially considering some of the recent extensions we've seen. But can you really pay a 5'8", purely slot guy that much money on a team that has as many holes and problems as the Giants do? You probably cannot. So I expect he will probably walk in free agency to a team like the Raiders or the Titans or somewhere like that, where they have some cap space, they need a receiver, and can afford to go and kind of meet his demands. So that was one takeaway for me. On the defensive side of the ball, I wanted to give some credit. I mean, Abdul Carter, I thought, was very good. Granted, again, big, I guess, question mark on the offensive line of the Raiders, who looked like they had just gotten recruited from the local high school JV team because they could not block anyone for their lives. So, Abdul Carter, Brian Burns, Dexter Lawrence, Roy Robertson Harris, all those guys, Darius Alexander had great games. But again, there's an asterisk next to that because, my God, is the Raiders offensive line terrible. But we did get to see a couple of interceptions as well, Josh, which I think was positive. We only had 6 including the 2 today on the whole season. So a third of our interceptions this entire season were in this game. So, again, a positive side, but it was fun to watch. But when you really think about it, Josh, and you think about how terrible this Raiders team is, it's like, yeah, congrats for beating a JV high school caliber team. Is kind of what it felt like. Of course, these are NFL professionals, but if you're losing to this Giants team 34-10, you have to be pretty awful.
Yeah, I do also want to give credit to the people who made the interceptions. Bobby Okereke, Dane Belton, I think you shouted out them, but definitely did a good job. I mean, jumped the routes on both of them. Dane Belton kind of hopping in from the secondary position, the safety spot at that, and also filling in, right, for for injured players. And Bobby Okereke, although people are kind of seemingly done with him at the linebacker position. He still does what he normally does well, which is being the leading tackler. He did it again today, I believe, led the team or tied leading the team with Dane Belton, funny enough, and also got a tackle for loss and a pick. So nice job by Bobby Okereke. And obviously, every single week we say his name, but Brian Burns, the lone Pro Bowler on this roster, very well deserving of it, and showed it again today. A tackle for loss, 4 tackles in total, a sack and a half too. Got to Geno Smith a bunch, so much so that by the end of the game, unfortunately, Geno seemed to have an ankle injury. I know that was off the Dane Belton return, I believe, after his interception, and then it was a illegal block in the back or a chip shot, whatever it was, doesn't matter. Obviously, hope Geno Smith is okay there, but Brian Burns, stellar performance once again. A great player on this Giants defense this year. Hoping it continues, for years in the future, and hope Brian Burns sticks around with this New York Giants team.
Yeah, I mean, we have him locked up long term, luckily, and it's been a frustrating season, but he has not been one to shy away from the big plays. And I think we're slowly starting to see this defensive line come together, despite the fact that they've been, I'd say, extremely disappointing compared to what our expectations were, but it was good at least to see some of the pieces coming together today. No matter who the opponent was, and you can only play the opponent that's out there in front of you. So, it is what it is. But the Giants defense definitely stepped up a lot better. Obviously, Geno went out in that fourth quarter. We saw a little bit of Kenny Pickett at the end. Not that there was much hope at that point, as the Giants were already up by 17 or 24 points at that point in time. So, yeah, I think the long-term implications of this are, maybe being a little bit overblown. Yes, obviously the Giants are most likely not going to end up with the number 1 overall pick. I don't think this game necessarily changes anything in the future of Joe Schoen. Obviously, I don't know if you saw this, Josh, this morning. Ian Rappaport had that report that said that Joe Schoen is expected to stick around for the draft process, which means I would assume he's around for next season. Giants fans were up in arms about that, as am I. Obviously, don't want him or don't think he should stick around, but it'll be interesting to see what happens on Black Monday following next week's game, because I think he should be gone. If this win against this terrible Raiders team changed anything, then John Mara needs to sell the team, because that's ridiculous. But I'm still cautiously optimistic that he will be gone at the end of this season. But I don't think today's game had any impact on it if John Mara is any bit rational whatsoever. So nothing from that standpoint, but I do think you kind of saw your last hurrah from a lot of the Giants players, like your Devin Singletaries or your Wan'Dale Robinsons, and Bobby Okerekes as well, who I don't think you'll probably see around, especially if there's a new regime in place. So I think those are kind of the takeaways from it, but I don't think there was anything too drastic, at least in the semi-present to future timeline that's going to change because of this, but certainly frustrating for certain Giants fans like myself who, definitely saw the value in that number 1 pick. And, I think once that Bobby Okereke interception happened and you knew the Giants were up by, 2 scores to 3 scores, it was like, okay, we all know what's going to happen now. So just had to ride it out for the rest of the way. But the next week against the Cowboys is an interesting one, because the Giants are still in the race for the number 1 pick. If the Raiders somehow beat the Chiefs with who's going to be at quarterback for the Chiefs, I have no idea, considering they're going to be down to their 3rd string now after Gardner Minshew tore his ACL. So it'll be interesting if the Raiders could potentially get a win. I think it's still probably not possible because they are that bad, but the Giants didn't help themselves in the draft situation. But if they lose against Dallas, then they should be pretty solidified at number 2. If they win against Dallas, they could fall as low as number 5 if they do potentially, if everything goes against them, which of course is kind of the Giants' way at this point. But hopefully somewhere in that 2 to 3, maybe 4 range, worst case scenario.
For anyone who's curious, according to ESPN Analytics, it's 20% chance right now the New York Giants have the first pick in the 2026 NFL Draft. Going back to the game itself, I do also want to give credit to the Giants defense, which we already had, but regardless of it being Geno Smith, regardless of him getting injured, they only allowed 10 points. Geno Smith threw for less than 200 yards. Geno Smith only threw for 1 touchdown, had 2 interceptions, and the leading guy on this offense for the Vegas Raiders, his name's Ashton Jeanty. He ran for 60 yards today. That's it. No touchdowns on 16 carries. 60 yards. The Giants stuffed the run game, and especially was important when Brock Bowers hit the IR, and that was the leading pass catcher for the Raiders. It was all about, okay, now you have to stop Ashton Jeanty because that is going to be the guy. And he had over 100 yards on the ground the previous week, and he also had a touchdown as well. So that was I think it was my player to watch for the Raiders, and the Giants did a good job. They did. They had him, forced him to less than 100 yards and didn't let him get in the end zone, and only let the Raiders get into the end zone in totality just once, which is pretty remarkable. And it's something we haven't really seen all season. And again, I know, Alex, that, you kept on saying it like you're frustrated. I get it. But at this same, in the same way, I am happy that we were able to see a win like this season. I understand at what area it gets to. However, the draft capital that you have with the number 1 pick compared to the number 2 pick, yes, okay, in terms of if we get into April and the draft stock on Mendoza is insanely high, then it's going to suck. I get that. But I really do think if you're really worried about a 1 versus 2 and still trading back, I think you'll still get a pretty good offer if you have the second pick in comparison to the first pick. I'm sure the offer would be better if you had the first, but I don't think it'll be way far off. There'll still be QB needy teams. And if it goes into the offseason, past February and past the Super Bowl, and in March, those QB stocks start to rise up heavily, you're sitting pretty if you're the New York Giants and you have the second pick in this year's draft. Or next year's draft. It's still December, 28th today?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely need somebody to kind of rise up, right? You need a meteoric rise in the kind of draft stock, a Senior Bowl performance or something like that, because right now it's definitely Mendoza or bust at the quarterback position. So you definitely need someone to kind of climb up, and there always is, like you mentioned, Josh. So whether they do that or stay pat and choose a guy like Caleb Downs, who would also be a game changer on the defensive side of the ball, I think it's not as much about the pick as making sure they can get the GM and head coach right, which of course I have very little confidence they're going to be able to do. But as long as there's a little bit of confidence somewhere, maybe we can turn things around.
Yeah, that's kind of where it is right now. Mike Kafka gets his first win as an NFL head coach, even though it's interim, but I guess whatever it may be. The Giants get a win, 34-10 against the Vegas Raiders, improve to 3-13 on the year, and now have the second pick in the 2026 NFL draft after this win. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the Giant Take podcast. I know maybe we weren't as much of uppity and not wrong word to use. But what do you want to say? Excited?
It would be impossible after the season that we've had to be that excited. Even if we won by 90 points, I don't think we would be up here, jumping up and down. It's been a painful season, as it always is.
It is what it is. But we appreciate you joining us here. We have one more preview to go against the Dallas Cowboys coming up next weekend. One more game recap in this season as well, and in what's been a horrendous season for the Giants. But maybe for some of you who are on, Alex's side, more horrendous from today's game, or from my side, a little pleasant surprise and actually some fun and competent football that we saw on the field today. That's just my opinion of it. Regardless, we appreciate you making it this far. Alex is on X at ANorien23. I'm on there at JoshSolo29. The Giant Take Pod is our social handle on all the platforms. And we thank you so much. We'll see you next time. Peace out, everybody.